As you already know, yesterday was an extremely challenging and busy day in the city of Calgary. There were several high profile events, including a brazen homicide, and very shortly thereafter, a call that resulted in one of our officers having to do something that police officers hope they never have to do: discharge their weapons to preserve the safety of others. In context, these were just two of numerous resource intensive calls that occurred in the past 24 hours. Specifically, between 1 and 2 p.m. yesterday, when these calls came in, CPS received 81 calls for service involving everything from collisions, medical emergencies, non-criminal sudden deaths, missing persons, domestic incidents, mental health concerns, checks on the welfare, break and enters, a drunk driver, reports of a person with a weapon along 16th Avenue, as well as an assault suspect barricaded within a residence. Aside from the high-profile events managed by our frontline officers, investigators and support staff are doing significant work behind the scenes to progress a number of very complex investigations. Some of these information regarding some of these has been released to you over the past couple of days. That includes several homicide investigations, a string of commercial robberies that have occurred in the city, and very specifically, the random stabbing of a woman on the C-train platform. There are other serious investigations nearing completion that I anticipate we will be in a position to provide updates on in the days to come. So stay tuned for that. I'd like to turn back, though, to the two serious incidents from yesterday that I raised initially, as we have received a number of inquiries about those. First, the homicide in Crestmont. Around 1:30 p.m. yesterday, officers were called to the 500 block of Cresthaven Place Southwest for reports of a shooting. When they arrived, they found a man in his 30s and his dog had both been shot. EMS arrived and declared the man deceased at the scene. The dog also died as a result of the shooting. Our condolences go out to the victim's family, loved ones, and also to the community. We are encouraging anyone who may have witnessed the shooting to come forward to police with any information you may have. We also offer the supports of our Victims Assistance Support Team in the event that may be required by anybody involved. We believe this was a targeted shooting. A vehicle pulled up near the victim, one or more suspects got out, shot the victim and his dog, and then drove off. An unidentified vehicle that was later located by the RCMP near Cochrane may be connected. An autopsy occurred today, and we will be in a position to release the victim's name once he's been formally identified by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, and of course once all next of kin notifications have been completed. We have an entire homicide team, as well as numerous supporting units, working diligently on tracking down the person or persons responsible. Should more information come to light about suspect descriptions or any other aspect of this crime, the homicide team will share that with you when they can. 10 minutes after the homicide took place, we received a report of a man on the C-train in possession of a gun. This event ended with an officer-involved shooting at Sirocco Station. The Alberta Serious Incident Response Team is conducting the independent investigation into this incident, as you know. ACERT will speak to their investigation in due course. However, I can provide you with some information about the events that led up to our officers becoming involved in this matter. The incident played out in a very public setting, as you know, the C-train platform, and footage was captured by many people on cameras, on CCTV, and of course on CPS body-worn cameras. We are confident that all of this will be helpful to the ACERT investigators as they work through this investigation. After receiving a call from a very astute transit employee about a man with the gun, members were able to get the train stopped at Sirocco Station. District 2 members did an outstanding job of evacuating the train, car by car, as well as the surrounding area. I want to pause here to commend our officers who put themselves in harm's way to ensure that no member of the public was caught in a dangerous situation. The tactical unit was called in and brought with them a number of resources to assist in a safe resolution of this matter. That included using a drone to be able to safely confirm the subject's location within the train once it was emptied. The intention of our officers was and is always to contain the subject and negotiate his safe surrender. Unfortunately, the man did not comply with the officer's directions. The situation escalated, and sadly, a member of the tactical unit was forced to deploy their firearm. Tactical Emergency Medical Services was present at the scene and immediately moved in to provide medical aid to the affected person. EMS, who also was called and was ready at the scene, transported the man to hospital in serious condition. He remains in hospital today, and our hope is that he will make a full recovery. As I mentioned at the start, no officer wants to be put in a position where they have to make the decision to fire their weapon. We put every effort into attempting to resolve situations without any use of force, and in the vast majority of cases, we do so successfully. I am immensely proud of the bravery, compassion, and professionalism displayed by the officers who were involved in this call, as well as the homicide response. This is, however, the tip of the iceberg. As I mentioned, members across the service are displaying immense dedication and commitment to the multiple challenges that they face. And this is not unique to yesterday. This is the norm. Conversations about safety of our city and of our public transit in the downtown area are all going on within our police service and our city right now. We are concerned about the recent spike in violence, and we are actively engaged with our partners to make it stop. We will have extra teams deployed to C-train cars and platforms in and around the downtown for the duration of the stampede. Recently, we've increased police presence in and around C-trains across the city, utilizing our beats and bikes, specifically in the areas of Westbrook, Sun Alta, 69th Street, Somerset, Bridlewood, Shaughnessy, Heritage, Southland, and Anderson. Several operations are currently underway to address social disorder and criminal behavior, including drug trafficking in these areas. We are partnering with Calgary Transit to increase proactive patrols on C-train lines and platforms, in conjunction with the recently announced partnership for expanding the dope teams onto the transit lines. We have doubled our downtown bike teams from 2 to 4, and we have made investments, as you know, to provide better crisis response and outcomes for community and much needed support to the front line. However, despite adding these supports for people in crisis, officers are still required to respond to volatile, high-risk situations like the ones we saw yesterday. Despite the incidents that occurred yesterday, we have experienced, and I think Deputy Chief Cook reported this to the Police Commission recently, we have experienced fewer shootings and fewer homicides thus far in 2021 than we had in 2020. Regardless, even one of these events is one too many. And the reckless disregard for public safety and violence of any kind will not be tolerated in our city. Full stop. Every Calgarian has the right to live, work, learn, visit, or play in our city free from fear of violence or other criminal behavior. Our members will continue to do their level best to make that a reality. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have in relation to these events.
Thank you, Chief. Our first question is from Dave Naylor with Western Standard.
Thank you, Chief. Just wondering if the homicide victim was known to police and if you found any link with the ongoing gang violence in the Lower Mainland.
Thanks for the question, Dave. I'm actually going to leave that to Colin and the homicide team. I think they'll have an update in the coming days in relation to the victim and that sort of thing. So I think that'll come to you shortly here.
Any other questions, Dave?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from Dylan Short.
Thank you. I have a few questions. I'm not sure. I guess we'll just do follow-up after or whatever. Anyways, you mentioned it on the C-train, and obviously there's the ongoing investigation with ACER, and I'm sure there's an investigation within CPS as well. But you mentioned that there was footage captured on body-worn cameras as well as CCTV from the public as well. I'm curious whether it's during the investigation, after the investigation, or any time in between, will you commit or look at releasing any of that footage publicly?
Well, you would have to in this case, because ACERT is the primary investigator or investigative body on this. That would be for them to do. That obviously is extremely evidentiary and will form part of their investigation. Our policy right now around the release of body-worn video, during the course of investigation or prior to the conclusion or a prosecution, is that we don't do that.
Do you have a follow-up, Dylan?
Yeah, just quickly, obviously two very high profile events relating to weapons in a 10-minute span. Any indication that they're connected in any way at this point?
No. We looked at that for sure, and there is no indication that those two events were connected at this point.
Anything else from you, Dylan?
Yeah, just one more maybe, and then I'll pass the mic. You know, obviously you never want to see violence anywhere in the city, but given the location in Crestmont, a fairly affluent neighborhood, far out from the city center, does that add anything extra, any elements to an investigation or to a level of concern? And again, given that it was at 1:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think all of that will be looked at in terms of the context of the homicide investigation, why it occurred there, the proximity to maybe where the victim lived or whatever the case might have been. So there may well, because we believe it was a targeted shooting, there may well be explainable reasons why it occurred at that place and at that time. But I think, your point is a really good one. We're certainly concerned when we see events like this unfold in quiet neighborhoods of the city. We're often surprised to see that happen. We deploy our resources in a way that's, what I would call intelligence led. We know where, issues are likely to occur. And so we basically target the resources for where we believe the business will be. At times like this, where we see violent events in communities that perhaps we didn't anticipate it, that's certainly poses an additional challenge for us.
Thank you, Dylan. Our next question will go to Dave Dormer.
Hello, sir. I'm just wondering, the car that was found by Cochrane RCMP that may have been connected, where was that found at?
I don't know the exact location. I know it was in the Cochrane detachment area. I know it was west of Calgary and somewhere in the vicinity of Cochrane, but that's really all I know about it.
Okay. And we got like a doorbell cam that sort of has audio of the shooting, and you can hear what sounds like up to about 20 shots. Can you just talk to the sort of brazenness of that many shots? And do you know where all those bullets went, and like were any houses hit or vehicles? And also, from what I hear, it sounds like there's a bit of overlap. So was more than one person shooting, and did the victim shoot at all?
Those are all really important investigative details that are contained within the homicide investigation. But I will touch on, what I think is a public safety piece that you asked there. When officers initially respond in situations like that, witnesses will provide some of that very same information that you're talking about in terms of potentially the number of shots that may have been heard or what direction they may have been fired in. So that's one of the primary things that officers do when they get to scenes like that, is make sure that, obviously it's a tragic situation that they're dealing with, but then to make sure that in the surrounding community, there isn't more victims or more harm that's been done. As part of the scene investigations, there, identification section members and homicide investigators do look to try to figure out how many shots were fired and where they went, and also recover evidence in relation to those. So that is a very integral part of the investigation that is carried out in the early going.
Do you know if any houses or vehicles were hit?
I don't.
Thanks, Dave. Our next question will go to Krista Dow.
There. Just in another matter, Chief, can you speak to this unprovoked stabbing attack that happened on Tuesday on 7th Avenue and 1st Street? Can you speak to how concerning this is to police, and are you able to address downtown safety? Is this something police are more concerned about?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So it is definitely something we're concerned about. I think anytime you see a random incident where the victim didn't know the attacker and that there was no pre-existing interaction between the two or anything that would sort of explain even the two of them coming together, that's shocking. I would say, we're very concerned. I would call that a cowardly attack. I can tell you that we've got some very strong leads in relation to this right now, and this is the highest profile for the one district members dealing with. So Yeah, we have seen, along with this one, we've seen a spike. I would say that these are still events that are rare events, but we have seen a recent spike in these types of events, not necessarily the stranger on stranger, but the violent incidents downtown. And it is a significant, significant concern for us, and we're going after it.
Any follow-up questions from you, Krista?
No, thanks, guys. I'm good.
Great, we'll move on to Lauren Pullen, please.
Hi, Chief. Thanks for taking my question. Can you hear me? Ooh.
I sure can. Lauren, go ahead.
Oh, pardon me. Just to follow up to that very first question, I understand obviously the victim's connection to gangs is being released later by a homicide unit, but can you release any other details or information about the nature of this targeted attack? Is it believed to be drugs or gang related, or can you shed any light on what you exactly mean by targeted?
We believe it's targeted just because of the sort of the high level nature of it and the information that's been provided to homicide investigators. But at this point, I want to leave any updates that will be given in relation to this to homicide. There are sensitivities around the investigation in the early going, and I wouldn't want to compromise anything or release anything that's not proper or not correct. So I'm just going to err on the side of caution with that.
And just to follow up again to the number of shots fired, do you believe that it's two shooters, or can you say how many suspects at this point in time?
Once again, I'm going to leave that to the homicide folks. I'm not intimately involved in those details.
All right, and when do you expect that we'll get that homicide investigation update?
Well, I think the update will come quite shortly there in relation to the identity of the victim and that sort of thing. In terms of any other specific releases of information, that'll really be to the homicide team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. We'll move on to Terry Fukowski from CTV Calgary. Terry, we're over to you.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Thanks, Chief, for taking my question. Just a few for you. The first, I'm just wondering about the vehicle found in Cochrane. Are you able to give us any details about the condition that it was found in, if it was torched or anything like that?
I have to tell you, I've been extremely busy the last couple of days, and so I don't know what information has been released publicly now. So I'm just going to leave that question. But if I would invite you to follow up with our corporate comms folks, and I do think that information might be out there, but I'm not certain of it. So I think they can help you with that after.
Okay. Are you able to share any details about the victim in terms of if he lived not necessarily on that block, but in the neighborhood, or if police have went to the home to notify next of kin?
Once again, I'm going to leave that to the homicide folks, just to make sure that I give you good information, or that you get good information.
Okay. And last but not least, I'm just wondering if you have any details on the dog. What kind of dog was shot?
I don't. It's obviously really unfortunate, but I don't have information on the breed or type of dog.
I know that you mentioned that you can't say whether he's known to police. Can you say similar question, but whether he has, I guess a history put with police, or any crimes in the city that are known of, or in BC?
Again, that's something I'm going to leave to the homicide investigators. I apologize for not being able to help you out with your 0 for 4 there, but I'm going to leave that to homicide.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, we'll go next to Colleen from CBC. Go ahead, Colleen.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Okay. You never know in these vacuums. Just going back to the downtown, the concerns about violence in the downtown, can you speak to what you think is happening right now? Why there seems to be an increase?
I'd be speculating, Colleen, which I really am loath to do. But I can say, I think, with, I don't know if it's COVID fatigue or patience or whatever, like we're just seeing, I think generally we're seeing incidents where people are a bit frayed at the nerves and are reacting or overreacting, to things that, one might think they wouldn't react to that way. So we're seeing, road rage incidents, or, minor exchanges between people that are escalating into things that the police are having to become involved in. probably, at levels that we haven't seen that. So again, I have no scientific evidence to attribute it to COVID, but I just think, there has been lots of talk about the mental health impacts of a long-term pandemic with, isolation from loved ones and that sort of thing. So we are certainly seeing that, that members of the public are, I would say, frayed at the nerves. And so there is conflict that's erupting over things that we wouldn't ordinarily perhaps see.
And you mentioned your increased presence on this C train line. Is that where you're mostly seeing a lot of conflict?
You know what? I can tell you right now, what we do is we're certainly looking at the locations where things are happening and the times of day. And so I mentioned, certain stations and that sort of thing. So as much as, it's helpful to sort of target areas that we think are, have difficulties, or where we're seeing more incidents. I think right now, for the benefit of the public, I think people would feel good just to see a higher number of police and transit officers at, all points along transit or downtown. So that's what we're aiming for, is really just a broader, visible presence. So the public can definitely expect to see a greater presence downtown in response to this.
Right. I just wanted to add, in talking to my colleagues, they said that I haven't been downtown a long time, but they have. And they just said that sometimes it can seem kind of like nobody's there and it's a bit scary right now. So probably that's what, the increased police presence might help, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's no question, with the diminished, tenancy in terms of office towers and that sort of thing. And even going forward with, work from home arrangements and that sort of thing, I think it's fair to say there are less people downtown. And so as a result of that, I think, it probably does feel different. And we recognize that as your police service, we have a role to play. And I think anything we look at going forward in terms of revitalization and development moving forward depends on people feeling safe and comfortable to invest or to return to the downtown. And so I feel like we have a big role to play, and our members will be fully engaged in that.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you, Chief. If there are no other questions, this will conclude the media availability today. If you require a the high-res footage, please call the media line or email us. Thank you.